Welcome to The Forgotten, a home for those who are looking to gain facts on numerous murder cases, suspicious deaths, and disappearances. I'm your host, Shayna, and we're here to keep the memories of these victims alive and ensure these cases and people will not be forgotten. Welcome to The Forgotten family. Cortney Lake was a beautiful 24-year-old woman at the time of her disappearance on June 7th, 2017, in St. John's, Newfoundland. For people who might not know, St. John's is the capital of Newfoundland and Labrador Province in Canada. This case involves a lot of backstory, so before we get there, let's talk about Cortney. Cortney was born in February of 1993. She was the firstborn child and only daughter of her parents, Sean and Lisa Lake, whom she also shared a brother named Colin. She was the first granddaughter on both sides of the family, so she was loved and spoiled by all of her grandparents. She was also very close with two of her aunts, named Donna and Glenda. As a young child, her mother mentioned that she always either had her Barney doll, her baby doll, or her bottle with her at all times. It's pretty obvious from interviews that she came from a very tight, loving family. As she grew, she was known for being outgoing, funny, and having a big heart. Christmas was her favorite time of year, and she would always be the first person to have her tree up. She would even hand paint her own ornaments. Other facts about Cortney include that she was free-spirited, she loved the color purple, she loved butterflies, and she loved her Nan's Sunday cooked dinner. When Cortney was a teenager, she met a man named Jason Pike at an event in their hometown. Jason and Cortney hit it off and dated for about 4 years. During this time, Cortney became pregnant and she had a little boy named Oliver, who was 6 years old when his mother disappeared. From interviews of Jason, it sounds like Cortney may have been dealing with some personal issues. I'm not sure whether by this he meant maybe some type of addiction or a mental health issue, but whatever it was, on top of the added stress of taking care of a child, it played a part in the demise of their relationship. Things were rocky between them for a while, but eventually they came to a good place and were continuing to move in a positive direction. Cortney and Oliver were starting to build a good relationship, and Cortney and Jason began to co-parent really well. Jason had custody of Oliver, but Cortney would talk to Oliver either over FaceTime or on the phone at least every other day, and sometimes in the morning before school. She would also go with Oliver and Jason to his weekly swimming lessons, so she was definitely making an effort to be more involved and present in her child's life. As an outsider, I can only speculate, but I'm kind of wondering if this was her way of growing up, if she was finally figuring out who she was and realizing the parts of her life that were important, such as her son and her family. Eventually, Cortney met a new love interest who was an Army reservist named Phillip Smith. Even though at first he made a decent impression on her family, they weren't very fond of his personality and began to only tolerate him. There were red flags, like when Cortney would take Oliver over to Philip's house. Lisa would ask Oliver where his toys were that he took with him, and he would tell her that Philip threw them away. Because of situations like this, Lisa started to realize Philip wanted Cortney, but he didn't want the other important parts of her life, like her child. Not long after they started dating, Cortney moved in with Philip while he was working out of town. Not long after him being back in town a few days, Cortney called her mom to come and get her. This situation was not unusual between them for them to argue or have a domestic disturbance, and she would call her mom to pick her up, and then later she would go back. Things began to escalate on April 15th of 2017 when Philip assaulted Cortney. The assault took place when she tried to get out of Philip's truck. They had been in some type of argument, and when she tried to get out, to stop her, he punched her twice, once in the arm and once in the stomach. After the altercation, at some point, Cortney must have shared this news with her mother because on April 17th, Lisa Lake called the RNC, which stands for the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, which is a provincial police service for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. When the police came to take the report, Cortney complained of a sore arm, she had a bump on her left eyebrow, and a cut to the inside of her lower lip. After all of this, Lisa Lake filed a peace bond against Philip. A peace bond is a criminal court order made by a justice of the peace or a judge. It's a signed promise to keep the peace and have good behavior. Violating a peace bond is a crime, by the way. This peace bond had conditions stating that Philip had to stay away from Lisa, her residence, and virtually anywhere she would be. So even after Philip was given orders to stay away from Lisa's home, Cortney and Philip would still meet up. Lisa recalls looking out the window and seeing Philip's black truck pick Cortney up down the street. Abusive relationships tend to have a ton of manipulation, and Philip played into one of her weaknesses, which unfortunately was drugs. Cortney had struggled with addiction, and according to an interview with Lisa, he would claim that he had cocaine as a way to get her to go with him. One specific time, he told her he had drugs, but when she met with him, he said he didn't have anything, and this made Cortney livid. She actually broke out one of the windows in his vehicle. That night, Philip called the police, and conditions were put on Cortney to stay away from Philip. To say this relationship was toxic is an understatement. Even after this incident, the couple would continue to disregard orders and meet up. On May 5th, Lisa Lake received a phone call from Phillip Smith, who told her that he was going to kill himself. Lisa felt that even though he wasn't supposed to be in contact with her, that she could not bear to just let him take his own life. So at that point, Lisa contacted Philip's sister. Philip's sister then called the RNC and said that she was concerned about her brother and told officers that he was in his black truck and that she thought he was parked near RCAF Road near the airport in St. John's. To get the correct location, the police used GPS to track his cell phone, where they were able to find a truck matching the description, and they were able to verify that Philip was the registered owner of the truck they found. The officers went up to the truck where they saw Philip sitting inside, but once he saw them, he quickly drove off. They tried to chase after him, but they had lost track of him shortly after the chase began. They tracked his cell phone again and found him near a pond off Peacekeepers Way in Conception Bay South. When the police found him, Philip was in the truck trying to harm himself. I couldn't find specifics on what he was doing, but whatever happened caused him to be in a healthcare facility for 4 days. Along with this, he was charged with dangerous driving and evading arrest. This must have been Cortney's breaking point because while in the healthcare facility, Cortney received a peace bond. The conditions of the peace bond prevented Philip from having any contact with Cortney. On May 8th, Philip was released and at that time asked the court if he could change some of the restrictions that had been placed on him. Specifically, he wanted to, 1, drive to work, and 2, he wanted to contact Cortney because he, quote, wanted to continue their relationship because we love each other very much. The judge granted the ability to drive to work but denied the request to see Cortney. At this time, it seems like Philip is in some state of denial, and despite what has happened, he still believes that he's going to be in a relationship with Cortney. Philip continued to try to get in contact with Cortney, but she just wanted to move on with her life, and she was not interested in speaking. Not too long after this, Cortney decided that she wanted to pursue a new relationship with a friend named Ryan. This irritated Philip, so essentially, to get back at her for moving on May 15th, he sends nude photos of Cortney on Facebook to her new boyfriend. The really sad part about this is these pictures weren't just sent to her new boyfriend. They were sent to her father, her brother, her stepfather, her uncles, and other family members. Cortney never gave permission for anyone else to see these pictures because they were given to Philip when they were in a relationship, and he understood those photos were supposed to be for his eyes only. His actions were showing that he wanted to not only harm her physically, but also emotionally. As time passed, Philip's behavior began to escalate further. On June 5th, Philip called Cortney's cell and home phone a total of 33 times. She called the police because she noticed Philip was driving around her neighborhood and parked on the street next to her home and kept saying that he was coming over. According to an interview with Lisa, the police officer got there and he was in plain clothes and an unmarked car. While the officer was taking Cortney's statement, there was a knock. The officer opened the door and Philip was there demanding to speak with Cortney. The police officer arrested him right there. So now not only did this man hurt her physically and emotionally, but now he's moved on to stalking her. He was finally arrested that day for breaking the peace bond, but up until this point, there wasn't much happening to him for violating all of these orders. Philip had a complete and utter disregard for every order he was expected to follow. He didn't seem to care about anything the court threw at him and continued to do whatever he wanted, and he got away with it until this moment. Philip stayed in jail for 2 days and finally appeared in court on June 7th of 2017 for the numerous offenses he committed, which included assaulting Cortney, distributing her nude photos without her consent, breaching the no contact order, and numerous driving offenses. He pled guilty to all of this. However, the judge pitied him because he saw Philip as an Army reservist who was having a mental health crisis, and since he had never, not one time, had any charge in the past, thought that it would be appropriate to give him a chance. He told the judge that he had remorse for everything he had done, and he promised the judge he would never contact Cortney again. For all of this, he was sentenced to 2 days in jail and was released 4 hours later for time already served. On the way out, he was ordered yet again to stay away from Cortney and her mother. Later that same day, Jason Pike went to pick Cortney up around 3 p.m. so they could all go together to all of her swimming lessons. She was captured on CCTV footage at a gas station at 3:07 p.m. In the images, she doesn't look like she's in any distress. After this, Jason said he dropped Cortney back off at her mother's house around 5 p.m. Cortney's family was at a barbecue during this time and was still gone when she arrived home. She called her mom at 6 and then again at 7:30 just to talk for a second, and her mom told her she had all kinds of barbecue food for her if she wanted it. And Cortney told her that she was starving and that she would love food and to hurry up. Lisa's family arrived home around 9:30, 10ish, and Cortney was not there, and realized when they got there that Cortney had left her house key on the stove. Lisa kept trying to call Cortney, but it kept going to her voicemail. It was not like Cortney to not call and check in or let her mom know where she was, so Cortney's mom knew immediately that something was wrong. On June 8th, Lisa tried filing the missing persons report, but they told her it couldn't be filed until 48 hours had passed, but they could take her statement. When she first disappeared, everyone had their theories. Jason, who of course was the father of Oliver, thought she might be doing drugs. Lisa thought surprisingly maybe Jason had something to do with her disappearance. And Phillip Smith was vocal on social media, stating that Cortney's new boyfriend Ryan had something to do with her disappearance. Lisa immediately shot down Phillip's claims. Ryan's father is Cortney's godfather, and his parents were very close with Cortney's parents, and they'd all known each other for a very long time, so Lisa did not believe for a second that Ryan was involved in this. When it comes to Jason, police had forensic search his vehicle, which he agreed to, and it came up clean. He was cleared as a suspect and in interviews appears incredibly distraught, even saying that he felt a little cheated because he was expressing an interest in a possible future with Cortney to have their family back together. And he even expressed the sadness he felt when his son asked questions about his mom. CCTV footage became a huge part of this case. Of course, we have the footage from earlier on June 7th, when she simply made a purchase at a gas station and left, but later on a piece of CCTV footage that was captured from a neighbor's video surveillance on June 7th at 7:52 p.m., it showed Cortney walking down the street after leaving her home. This was helpful because it showed a direction that she was going and showed that she was alive at the time and that she was not taken against her will at this point. Eventually, police told Lisa that they told her Cortney's phone had been turned off at 8:12 p.m., June 7th. It did not die. Now, let's fast forward to June 27th of 2017. A police officer called Lisa one night and said that he needed to talk, and it was important. When he arrived, he took Lisa's hand and he broke the news to her that he believed that Cortney had been murdered. Automatically, Lisa thought, Jason? Jason Pike? But the police officer assured her that it was not the father of Oliver. He said that he could not say the name, but it was someone who had court orders to stay away from her, and immediately the name flashed into Lisa's head, Phillip Smith. The same day, Phillip Smith violated his conditions when police observed Phillip drinking alcohol and purchasing alcohol. Since part of his conditions included him not being allowed to enter anywhere where alcohol is served, this was enough to arrest him. The police officer let Lisa know that he would be in front of a judge the next day for this violation, on top of driving his truck without a license. We'll come back to Phillip being in custody in just a moment, but first I'd like to continue on to June 28th, which was the next day. There was a search warrant issued on the property that Phillip Smith and his father lived. During this search, numerous boxes of items were removed from the house, and Phillip's truck was taken, which later on was returned. And then on June 30th, The RNC announced to the public that Cortney's disappearance has now been classified as a homicide. More CCTV footage had surfaced miraculously from a bus dash cam, and it showed Cortney continuing to walk from the previous footage when a black GMC Sierra truck pulled up behind her. She gets in the truck, and then the driver does a quick U turn and speeds off. Even though in the video you can't make out what the driver looks like, you can see that there's a huge decal sticker on the back window of the pickup truck. It was the Browning logo. And the Browning, by the way, is a US manufacturer of fishing tools and firearms. It looks like a picture of a deer head. And this is exactly the same decal that Phillip has on his truck that fits the same description. Can you imagine if this video didn't exist? This one tiny piece of video blew the whole case wide open. Okay, so going back to Phillip Smith, as the investigation continued, Phillip Smith dealt with ongoing legal troubles that stemmed from the day that Cortney disappeared and previous driving charges. Specifically, on the day Cortney disappeared, he breached his conditions to stay away from Cortney when he picked her up, and he drove even though he wasn't supposed to be. On top of this, he also had to answer for the conditions he had breached on June 27th, which was when he got caught drinking, even though his conditions stated that he couldn't be near alcohol. He pled guilty to all of these charges. While Phillip was in custody, he was questioned about picking Cortney up, which he admitted to, by the way, but he kept changing his story. And he would say that he dropped her off in one place just to change his story a minute later and say he dropped her off somewhere else. In the end, police never got a clear story of where they went or where he actually dropped her off at. At this point, police didn't have enough to charge Phillip with anything other than the conditions that he had breached. They couldn't charge him with her homicide yet because they were afraid that they didn't have enough evidence and that they didn't want him to get off on a technicality even though he was a strong suspect. For breaching his conditions, Phillip was supposed to serve 90 days in jail. The judge said that he would have given him longer, but this time period had already been set from terms agreed on previously. With time served, he had 24 days to serve, but he ended up getting out early because of good behavior. He was released on August 16th after 16 days, and on top of this, he was also given 1 year of driving prohibition. Simultaneously, while Phillip was in custody, numerous searches were conducted in numerous areas. Police believe that Cortney was taken somewhere wooded, secluded, and a short drive from where she was picked up. These searches included wooded areas, ponds, highways, and a ton of other area. People searched on foot, in water, and on ATVs to try to cover as much ground as possible. Finally, on July 2nd, there was a search of Patty's Pond, which identified an item that turned out to be Courtney's. Whatever this unidentified item was, it was located near Torbayman's Pond by the Irving Station, west of St. John's. Due to this, there was an extensive search performed in the area, but unfortunately nothing else was found. In the fall of 2017, things weren't going so well for Phillip Smith. His criminal history was starting to affect his military reserve career, and an administrative review was taking place to see if he should be discharged from the military. So now let's fast forward to Halloween night, October 31st of 2017. Phillip called his family saying that he was going to kill himself. His family called the police to check on him, but they were unable to locate him until 3 a.m. November 1st when they found his body. Lisa mentioned in an interview that he had hung himself. He was found near his family's cabin in the Bellevue Beach area. It came to light that he was the only suspect, and the police were building their case against him. Immediately after his suicide, people scoured the area he died because they thought maybe he ended his life somewhere near where he left Cortney, but again, nothing was discovered. Something else I wanted to note was Phillip was due in court on November 7th to renew the peace bond Lisa had against him since the old one had expired. After Phillip Smith's death, police mentioned that now that Phillip is gone, maybe others who have withheld information or have refused to talk will now come forward. If you have any information regarding the case, you can contact the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary at 709-729-8000. Tips can also be submitted anonymously via Crime Stoppers by calling 1-800-222-8477. Doing this, you won't be asked your name, you can stay anonymous, and you won't have to testify in court. At this point, Cortney's family just wants her back to gain some sense of closure and to bury her body in a respectful way. It's not too late to do the right thing, and with calling Crime Stoppers, you have nothing to lose. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to Cortney's story. If you enjoy The Forgotten and would like to help support the podcast, you can click the support button, and with it, I will continue to improve the channel and keep these cases coming. If you enjoy the cases and would like to hear me talk about them further, please consider joining my Patreon, which is called The Forgotten After Hours. Here, I will create short episodes that will dive into the cases we've gone over, and I'll talk about different scenarios, what I think happened, and things we can learn from these horrible tragedies. I will post the link below. Until next time, stay safe and keep your eyes open.